If there was a prize for books that are simply just doing the most, I would have to submit Requiem for a Dream by Hubert Selby Jr. I recently finished this and it was so tedious, so laboured. We'll get into it. I'm getting stoner flashbacks where I can already anticipate the comments that are going to say, Alfie, you just didn't understand the book. You just didn't understand the book. Maybe. I have enough privilege to have never experienced addiction, which is probably the central theme of this book. However, I know of other books that deal with the same themes and I would say do a better job. This goes all around the houses and there's a lot of times where it's just a lot of nothing. And can we get into Sarah? So the mum, Sarah Goldfarb, she's kind of the best part of the book, but that's really just because she's the only part of the book that's actually happening. Like Harry, Tyrone, and Marion, their little like drug dealing, drug taking, downward spiral takes far too long, and there's a lot of scenes with them where they're just sort of sitting around loading up, and it's like, I'm bored. Sarah, she's in a different book. Like her scenes, I was really looking forward to them because she was going through something completely different. Like if everyone else in the book was in like a second rate naked lunch, then she was in like What's Eating Gilbert Grape. Like she was in a different story. I wish that we had spent more time with Sarah and Harry together. If it had really leaned into like the Confederacy of Dunces of it, that sort of twisted Oedipal connection between like an overbearing mother and like a deadbeat son who's not really achieved anything and has this sort of parasitic clutch on his mother, like because she loves him unconditionally and he knows that. Like I am here for that, and I wish that had been explored more, because even though he's her son, she loves him, she talks about him constantly, they are barely in the same room. Like he spends most of his time with Tyrone or with Marion, and it's just not as interesting. Whereas with Sarah's character, there's so much potential for camp, like high silly camp. Like the amount of times that she's talking about this red dress, like I wanted her in front of the mirror with some lipstick being like, I'm still pretty, pretty girl. Like, I hope the film really capitalizes on the craziness of the Sarah chapters, because they were the highlight of the book. And then we would get to Harry and I'd be like, ugh, this bitch. Because at a certain point, I looked into it. I was on Google. I was like, did Hubert Selby Jr. actually experience substance abuse? And it turns out he did. It was one of those classic cases where he went to hospital, received pain relief, and that was the catalyst for his addiction, much like in the 2000s when Stephen King was hit by a car, and that was when he first was given oxycodone, and then he wrote Dreamcatcher, and it's crazy. But that's so interesting to me because the way in which this is written, I would never have guessed, because it's so detached, it's so removed from the situation. Like he feels more like a documentarian than someone who's actually vicariously experiencing his own trauma through his characters. You know what I mean? Like it just felt so removed that I was shocked that this is actually his own story externalized in these characters. Maybe that's his coping strategy. Maybe by removing his own personal experiences from the story, he is able to show how it really is something that could happen to anyone. Like nobody starts taking a recreational substance with the plan for it to become a problem. And so that's very much explored through this family that traditionally would have been quite happy, and were it not for things like substance abuse that have got in the way and split them up. The last 50 pages were incredibly reminiscent of Less Than Zero, where the story just really jumps off a cliff and the craziness amps up. Like Marion especially, we spend a lot more time with Harry's girlfriend and the sort of things that she has to resort to get her dope, where she's sort of like selling her body, and then there's all this really demented Santa Claus imagery with the main guy that she's sleeping with. It was did not care for that. But it also just felt so strange to me how Marion, for most of the story, is like a tertiary character. Like, you barely see her, and when you do, it's just because she's like Harry's girlfriend. And then all of a sudden, she has one of the main roles. Like, we hear from her all the time because she's doing these things to get her fix. And it was random. I was like, oh, why couldn't we have seen her arc all the way through the story? Like, it just felt uneven. I really don't have much else to say, to be honest with you. Like, there were moments of brilliance, but they were definitely overwhelmed by the general sense of, like, yeah, there was just a lot of time wasted. And in a book that is, like, what, just over 200 pages, you can't really afford to be that sort of laboured in your delivery. I'm sure at some point I'll watch the Aronofsky film. I feel like if anyone is going to take a story like this and make it a memorable feature film, it would have been him. So I would not be surprised if the film is better than the book, and that seldom happens, but here it probably could. But do I recommend it? No, not really. Maybe if you have like a personal history of substance abuse, maybe this will speak to you on a more personal level. I don't know. I feel like that's reaching. I'm gonna go put on my red dress.